Hardrick laughs. You're not completely wrong there, little girl, but my family's opinion of me had nothing to do with my size, I'm afraid. The only reason I'm this small right now is because I've magically shapeshifted myself into a dwarf. I assure you that my height is well above average among my peers. I was meant to ask, Rose says, why did you choose to shapeshift yourself into a dwarf, not a human? Wouldn't that have been easier to fight if you'd have kept your body proportion at least somewhat similar to your original form? Remember how I said that my friends call me the dwarf? Hardrick says, well, that's because I spend most of my time drinking with dwarves of the northern continent because I'm shapeshifting into one more often than not. Given that I picked up their accent and mannerism the many years I've spent in their taverns, I thought it would raise less suspicion if I just came disguised as a dwarf instead of a human. Plus, I have always enjoyed fighting with a handicap. That's also a bonus. He laughs again. Flower is now approaching Darren and starts to address him. I'm sorry, I still didn't get your name. She tells him, Darren. He says the name's Darren. You don't really like me very much, do you, Darren? The girl asks with a concerned note. I like you just fine. He says it's a banshee I'm not very fond of. Oh, lighten up, Darren, Hadrick says. What do you think she's going to do? Betray us all and join the ogres once we get to their stronghold? Actually, that's exactly what I'm worried about, Darren says. I think I'm starting to understand why Petal doesn't want to talk to you guys, Flower says. If I may ask, Kate says, how exactly did you and Petal come to share the same body? Never heard of something like this before. But Petal told me that our soul fused together during her awakening and 20 years ago, Flower says. I don't really know the specific of soul fusion though. You'll have to ask Petal about that. I'm so sorry about what happened, Rose tells her. It must have been a terrible ordeal for a child to go through. By the way, I've been just wondering, the powers and the lore and everything in these books is insane to the point that I don't think society could normally function. I don't think a society like this would function. I think the societies will not function like this and they would collapse on their own and just become anarchy. The only reason I can think of society might have continued despite all this bullshit is because some extremely powerful beings are like controlling the society to somehow function. Otherwise, I don't see a normal way of functioning. Like if any of our world's normal governments were given to this world, the civilization would collapse immediately. Anyway, I'm so sorry about what happened, Rose tells her. It must have been a terrible ordeal for a child to go through. No, you got it all wrong, Flower says. The day Petal awakened was the happiest day of my life. At long last, I had someone here with me to share my world with. You cannot simply imagine the joy I felt when I realized that I no longer had to live my life alone inside of my own mind. Sure, she's an introvert. Talking about an active imagination. I know a good doctor in the Western continent if you're interested. Live inside your own mind. You mean to say that you space out a lot? Sure. No, Flower shouts. I mean that I'm literally living inside my own mind, and I've been doing so ever since I was born. Wouldn't anyone ever believe me? What does that even mean? I mean that I'm literally living inside my own mind? Can she project herself inside her skull or something? I don't believe me. I believe Flower. Kate says. You do? The girl asks. Yes, because you're not the first person to tell me this. A friend of mine called. Kate pauses for a bit before she begins to speak again. A friend of mine called Diane was in the same situation as you. She wasn't the only one. Many of the orphans for the Beacon of Hope were like this. The Lesedi called them ethereals, people who identify with their souls instead of their bodies. I see. So that's how it is. So she has soul presence, and because of that, she feels this way, like I'm trapped within this body or whatever. The souls, Rose asks. Yes, Kate says. Most people don't even know that they have a soul because they only use their 5 senses to explore the world around them. However, the soul, which stores a person's memory and the very essence of their being, is actually being kept on the ethereal plane in a pocket universe that is usually referred to as their mind. By the way, so what does that mean? So if like a person dies, they just like the soul will retain all their memories. So what happened to Cutthroat Dave then? Is he alive then in that world? Or does his soul get auto-deleted when he dies here? While the human brain facilitates the interaction between the soul and the body, it's not the sole actor in the creation of an individual's personality, as most scholars would have you believe. But a person dies in the same way that their body decomposes, eventually becomes one with the earth. The person's soul also decomposes into ethereal matter and eventually becomes one with the ethereal plane once more. Okay. So that makes sense. Okay, so he is dead, or he will be soon enough once his soul disintegrates. So that means there must be a window. Like it may be a small window, but there must be a window where you could save someone by pulling their soul out of the ethereal plane. Hey, that's not what they taught me in Giant School, Hadrick says. As far as I know, once we die, our spirits are all supposed to go to the afterlife or whatever. whatever god we worship during our lives on this plane. Believe what you will, Kate tells him. I am merely reciting text from old Lassetti books, which was allowed to read during my time at the Beacon, or at least the books that they were kind enough to have translated in the common language. Getting back to the subject at hand, the ethereals are different from other humans because they experience life from the perspective of the soul instead of their bodies. I see, so that's weird. Imagine living your whole life inside a giant puppet, unable to get out, forced to use it every time you need to interact with the world, with a person from the outside world. Sometimes pretend that I can use invisible strings to control my body, a flower says. It makes life in here a little bit more bearable. Most children will instinctively realize that something is different about the ethereals, Kate continues. So they will usually isolate them from a very young age and not accept them in their groups. Being left alone, both in mind and the outside world, ethereals are forced to find their own ways to cope with their situation. Some of them will simply start shutting the whole world out and isolate themselves even further. Others will make titanic efforts to integrate themselves in society, but the social awkwardness that they gain from years of isolation will always stand in their way. Living their lives alone in their own mind also cause many ethereals to develop eccentric personalities and to fixate on a hobby they like until they become exceptionally skilled at it. Diane used to love tinkering with complex devices for hours on end. Flower, I assume that your chosen hobby would be acrobacy. Huh. Oh yes, Flower says, I absolutely love it. I used to be in a circus when I was little. Since then, there's rarely been a day since I've neglected to train my acrobatic skills. While your acrobatic skills may be noteworthy, Kate says, they are by far eclipsed by a natural affinity for magic. Do you not know why that is? I'm not sure. Petal always told me that I am learning magic at a much faster rate than should be humanly possible. Is this because I'm ethereal too? Yes, the ethereal plane is closer in nature to the magical plane than the earthen plane is. For this reason, your unique perspective allows you to understand magic much more naturally than the rest of us. Being an ethereal does not grant you magical powers upon birth. But those that are also born as mages are fated to become extremely powerful. This is why the Lassetti from the Beacon of Hope made it their mission to capture as many ethereal orphans as possible, in the hopes that their experiment would have a greater chance of success. My friend Diane and her brother were both ethereals, and they turned out to be quite the prodigies. I was wondering, so Lassetti have like really weak magical aura, right? So they don't have much magic in them, even less than a human. So how are these Lassetti were at some point able to fight against Stillwater, hordes of them, and kill so many of them, because we did see the necromancer pull super many skeletons of Stillwaters out of the ground. So I'm guessing that they were somehow able to kill them, and they were also able to teleport the dragon, so their traps must be on like some insane level. So they were essentially like humans using guns or something. Huh. Interesting. So we don't have magic, and we will probably never be able to become a mage using normal means. So unless this stat device bullshit somehow helps us, the only other way it would have to go is to find some knowledge about how to use these traps or whatever they're called. Okay, I think I'm finally starting to understand why Petal was so surprised to find me inside my own mind when she first awakened. If I were to venture a guess, Kate says, I'd say that your unexpected fusion with the Banshee soul also came as a result of your rather unique circumstances. Normally a Banshee would find the soul defenseless when she invades the host's mind, but you must have been waiting for her and armed and ready. Given that you had the terrain advantage, she had no choice but to settle for a compromise. Flower gasped loudly all of a sudden. Oh no, I just realized something. She says, the beacon you spoke of and the experiment. She pauses. Are you an artificial mage? She asked. I am. What do you ask? Oh gods. You must have had it so much worse than I did. At least I had Petal's experience to rely on when we were being chased down by banshee hunters. She taught me a lot of survival tips that have come in handy along the years. Would you like me to share some of them with you? I suppose it couldn't hurt. Great, Flower says as she cheerfully smiles. A cheerful smile returns to her face again. I'll try to remember everything I know on the way to the ogre stronghold. Come on, follow me. We can talk more while we walk. Ethereals, huh? Araka says to herself while we start a long march towards our objective. That's pretty cool sounding name. I might actually start using it myself from now on. So the fucking amulet is calling herself Ethereals, huh? So we don't still know the Araka's whole story. I guess we do know her story. The Lassetti trapped her and just gave her to this girl to take care of for some reason. We spent the next few hours following the path that Flower had told us about. During this time, Darren and Hadrick started a bit of a competition to see which one of them could tell the most interesting story about their adventures. Kate and Flower started sharing their similar life experiences with each other, which seemed to bring them a little closer. Once we could talk to Rose, we were just walking around. Okay. Once we reached the crossroads, I mean, I probably would do the same thing, but then again, Barry is not me. I would not enter this competition because I have half a brain left at least. Once we reached the crossroad around noon, we all stopped in our tracks and Darren started addressing Rose with a serious look on her face. Rose, I think you should take this path and head to your hometown as soon as possible. Don't worry about us and the callers, we'll be fine. The sick people in your town are all waiting for you. I guess even the animals could not harm the fucking, what is it called? Rose, because she should also have a collar around her, right? So I guess she does not have a collar around her neck. Rose was with us, so she was definitely captured, but she was not given a collar because she was a local, I believe. Maybe? I don't know. I don't know what's happening. Yeah. And the collar, and we'll be fine. The sick people in your town are all waiting for you. She can't leave, Kate says. Remember what the leopard told us about before? Oh, so she does have a collar around her neck. Before we left, if any two of the collars get further away than 3 miles from each other, then all of us will start to get electric shocks of increasing intensity surging through our bodies. If the collar get more than 4 miles away than each other, then we'll all get killed. The Seti were the ones who originally designed these devices. There was a measure they took to keep their prisoners in check. Rose, I'm so sorry. I did not know it would come to this. I should have tried to stop you when you offered to come with me yesterday. This is all my fault. Wait, what? I should have tried to stop you when you offered to come. Oh, okay. Kate, you have no way of knowing this would happen, Rose says. Even with this detour, I'll still arrive ahead of my original schedule. Holy shit, how many days was she planning on walking? As long as we keep following the direct route we have been using up until now. There's no need to apologize for any of this. We were friends, remember? Not knowing exactly how to answer, Kay simply nods to her and we all decide to take a small break to eat some food. Because we haven't really eaten much since our imprisonment, after I finished my meal, I noticed that Flower, who wasn't particularly hungry, have decided to make use of this time to practice the fire magic by shooting fireballs at various rocks lying on the side of the road. You sure do like to train, huh? I asked Flower as I approached her. Oh no, I'm not training right now, she says. I just like to blow stuff up. How old did you say you were again? I'm almost 30. Then why you are always acting like a 10-year-old kid? You do realize that your brain technically never developed past the age of 10. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. La la la, I'm not listening. The girl starts shouting and she covers her ear and starts singing. Rest my case, I say, and then I decide to change this. Oh yeah, that makes sense. That's why she's acting like a kid. Because her brain is not developed. So even if her soul is developed, she cannot utilize the brain to that extent because it's just not that developed. It's not as functional. Maybe the processing power is low and whatnot. It's a fully developed, I mean, it's properly human brain, but it's not on the level of like an 18-year-old or something. So that's why, maybe that's why she's acting like that. I'm not 100% on that. I rest my case, I say, and then decide to change the subject. So, what do you do with Araka? I see you're not wearing the amulet around your neck. Oh, she said that she wanted to socialize with the group, so I handed her to Hardrick for a while. She wanted to socialize with the group, so I handed her to Hardrick, okay. Since he's the only one who doesn't seem to have an aversion towards her. She then points to Hardrick, who is holding an amulet in his right hand, having a conversation with Araka about ogres and ways to kill them. It's a shame that I wasn't able to transform back into a giant when we reached the stronghold, Hardrick says. It's been a while since I've fought some ogres, and I really miss hearing the satisfying sound of them being squashed under my feet. How big are giants? Holy shit. At least you'll get to see the look on their dumb faces when you'll be sending their own farewells back towards them, Araka says. Actually, ogres are so stupid that I doubt they even have the time to realize what happened before they get burned to ashes. Both Araka and Hardrick then start laughing loudly at the same time. You know, I'm pretty good at teleportation magic, Araka says. If you free me from the amulet, I could teleport a few of the ogres here. We could have a little fun practice run before the main event. What do you say? Nah. Hardrick says with a grin. Well, it was worth a shot, Araka says. I'm so glad that Araka finally found someone she can relate to, Flower says, looking genuinely happy for her. I don't really have a lot in common with her, so we don't talk all that much. Petal hates her guts. That begs the question, I tell her. Why do you still keep her with you? I would like to ask the same question, Kate says as she approaches us. Wouldn't it be better to just throw her at the bottom of the lake and be done with it? I don't really feel very comfortable traveling with her at my side. Her very aura sends chills down my spine. I can't throw her away, Flower says with an uncharacteristically serious expression on her face. Why not? Kate says. Because she can free herself from the amulet if we leave her unsupervised. She barely has access to any magic while trapped in there, but with the little she has, she will also generate very small explosions as long as she is left alone to channel the spell for a few hours. Oh, so we should not leave it with Hattrick then.